Hi, everybody. This is Arthi from Human Chapters. I'll tell you a little bit about human chapters. Humans are living narratives with a past, present, and future. These narratives constitute of a number of chapters across a lifespan. The aim of these conversations is to highlight a chapter of the narrative and unpack its connections to other chapters. I don't care whether people are natural storytellers, but I truly do believe each one of us has a worthy story to share. In acknowledgement to country, we acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we meet. We pay respect to their tribal elders, past and present and emerging. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Today, we are so honored to be speaking to Paula about her chapter, Developmental Language Disorder. Paula, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Well, hi everyone. My name is Paula Orrego. I live in Washington State. I've been a social justice and political activist and public speaker since 2011, first primarily focusing on anti-bullying. But since 2021, I've been including spreading awareness about developmental language disorder into my advocacy work. And have been going strong ever since. In my spare time, my hobbies and my passions include aerial hammock. It's a type of dance where a long fabric is hung from both ends onto a ceiling, and I kind of like to think of it as combining gymnastics and ballet into creating this kind of circus art. And I also like to read and write stories and work out. It's just a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, Paula. Tell us about developmental language disorder. What is it? And I'm assuming it's a part of your activism and social justice. Yes, please.
Yeah. So, developmental language disorder is a type of neurodivergent condition where a person struggles with the use and understanding of language in all of its forms, whether that be orally through speaking and listening, or visually through reading and writing, or signed language. It's a lifelong condition. So you have it from birth, basically. It's often genetic. You get it from a parent or further back. And it it does it does get better with speech language therapy, but it's something that never goes away. And like I said, it's part of the neurodivergent umbrella. So we're kind of like cousins with with ADHD and with autism. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can
Um,
tell you.
yes, please.
I can tell you a little bit about my story with developmental language disorder if you would like.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so I was about 2 years old when my language development in both Spanish and English seemed to stop.
Mm.
I couldn't put two words together to create the start of a phrase when all the other children my age were already using simple sentences. I was still pointing to what I needed, like a snack or water. And the children my age were starting to move on, to progress in their language development. And I was basically stuck.
Mm.
My mom was the first person to notice this. She saw the other children my age and compared them to me in a way and was kind of like, there's something not right here.
Mm.
So, of course, she went first to my pediatrician, and the doctor kind of brushed off her concerns and said things like, oh, I see this kind of thing all the time with bilingual children, and eventually they're going to catch up. Eventually, your daughter's going to catch up. And my poor mother kept bringing this up more than once. And each time the pediatrician was not listening to my mom and not validating her concerns or following up with any referrals, just nothing but a pat answer of essentially, she'll grow out of it. So, pat answers until I turned 4. Uh, at 4, I went to a Spanish English preschool, and my parents were attending night school at the same time to get their teaching credential. So one day, the aide at the preschool came up to my parents when they arrived to pick me up. And she said that comparing my language skills with those of my bilingual peers, I wasn't where I should be. Now, we shouldn't compare children, but in this case, spoiler alert, that comparison saved me. So she wanted me to see the school's speech therapist for testing. And like I said, during that time, my parents were in school, and my parents had an agreement for how they were going to divvy up the work. One of the important things, for example, was that my mom was going to take notes while my dad just listened to the lecture, because he couldn't do both listening and taking down notes at the same time. So put a pin on that.
Yeah.
So they were in class when a guest speaker came to talk about learning disabilities. And the more that person spoke, the more my mom kind of went like, gee,
Wow.
that kind of sounds like you. And they were listening to it, and then they realized Paula is kind of going that trajectory. So they agreed even more with what the preschool aide said, that I should see a professional for what possibly could be some kind of learning disability. So to get the diagnosis, I didn't just stop at that speech therapist at the school or speech language pathologist, SLP. I had to see 2. The first one at the school, she only spoke English. So she had to refer me to a bilingual SLP. And she was like, oh, I know of this SLP at such and such hospital. She's bilingual, she's great, she can do better, more thorough testing than what I can do for Paula. So I saw the bilingual SLP. Her name is Stella, which, fun fact, she was the 3rd author for my article that I published about developmental language disorder in 2023. So you get to read her experience being my SLP in that article. But anyway, I saw her. And you remember how I said that my mom noticed I was kind of stuck at age 2?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So at 4.5, I had the receptive language skills, or the ability to understand language, of a 3-year-old. And I had that's the receptive, the expressive language skills, so the ability to produce language. I had the expressive language skills of about a 2-year-old. Believe me, that is significant.
Yeah.
So pretty much immediately, I was put into speech language therapy, both in school and with that bilingual SLP. Although I was with that bilingual SLP for the majority of the time. I didn't stay in school services for very long. It just wasn't giving me the specialized support that I needed. So I stayed in speech language therapy for actually 5 years, which is kind of a long time. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible, Paula. Like, in hindsight, looking at all of these moments separately, you can connect the dots so easily. But in life, that's not the case necessarily. And the fact that your mom questioned it at 2 years of age with almost a certainty, and that would have come with its own narrative. Why is that question so certain? But then thinking about your dad and how that's been the way of life almost for a very long time. And just, yeah, connecting all of those dots. Um,
Mhm.
Please tell us when you got assessed by the speech, so by Stella, the
Mhm.
bilingual SLP, and you are talking about receptive skills, expressive skills. How was that? I suppose it might be difficult to remember as a child, but how did you understand it when you think about your own understanding of language and your own expression?
So are you asking for my understanding of speech services or the understanding of my diagnosis?
The understanding of your diagnosis.
Yeah, okay. That's such an interesting question. I don't really remember my
Mm,
parents ever sitting me down and being like, listen, you have this condition, which now we call developmental language disorder. We call this something else back then. I
mm,
don't remember when was the moment that I learned I have a learning disability.
mm, mm,
Um, I just knew kind of in my gut and in my bones that there was something different about me.
mm.
And the way I was interacting with my peers and adults
Yeah.
was not getting, my message was not getting across to them.
Mm,
And this was, this is how I kind of knew that I was going for support for that when I went
mm,
to Stella.
mm.
Yeah.
Can we then, now thinking about the 5 years you were with Stella, I'd love to talk about developmental language disorder in different settings. So what it looked like at home, and then we can progress on to other settings, the school, but also socially. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So at home, having developmental language disorder was supported, of course, because yeah, I was the only child. I was surrounded by adults, by my mom, my dad, and my grandmother, who helped to raise me up until I entered sixth grade.
Mm,
So that my parents were patient with me. They were always doing what the speech therapist recommended.
mm,
They didn't just take it as a recommendation. They took it very seriously. They
yeah.
took it as treatment and they followed it to the letter,
Mm,
crossing every T, dotting every I. They were always asking me follow-up questions. They were letting me know when I wasn't always saying things well, I guess, for lack of a better term. They were very helpful with giving me accommodations, for example. So, one thing that has remained since the age of 4 up
mm,
until now is that I can do, if you give me a one-step instruction or two-step instructions, totally fine. By 3 steps, you have lost me.
mm,
So my parents would write on a post-it note, or now we do texts, right?
yeah.
Now my mom will send me a text, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, and I'm like, I got you. I
Yeah.
know what you want me to do. I will not forget. I will not lose it. Because
Yeah.
one of the things with developmental language disorder is we have issues with working memory and short-term memory. So
Mm,
this is an accommodation that works at home. So my parents are understanding because
mm,
they've been so intricately part of
mm,
this treatment, of the diagnosis, of everything. So home, pretty much good, pretty
mm,
much good.
mm.
School, social life,
Yeah.
not the same story. Not the same story. Um, of course, there are uh, parents in other homes have different things that they want to teach their kids.
Mm,
Schools have curriculums that they need to get through, especially if you're in a public school and you need to get to state testing. that makes sense.
Mm.
But when you don't teach children about children who are different from them
Mm.
in other ways, then they go to school and they see something and they don't understand it. And so what do? They bully.
Mm.
So it was it was ignorance on the part of the pediatrician who kept um, ignoring my mom, and then there's ignorance from my classmates who didn't understand that, you know, the if I didn't understand sarcasm, if I didn't understand an abstract joke, so a joke with abstract language, if I didn't follow what they said, it's not because I'm not listening or
Mm.
because I'm dumb. It's because I have something that makes my brain work a little differently than theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is okay. So that's the social part of school. What about the academic part of schooling?
Yeah. And again, teachers, students,
Mm.
and doctors, all of them didn't quite understand. And so the teachers, I think they learned about the conditions, types of neurodivergences that are important and big as well.
Mm.
Um, but hidden disabilities like developmental language disorder, I don't think is something they learned about.
Mm.
And so they didn't know how to help me.
Mm.
And I think because they were overworked, they didn't have the mental resources and the energy and the time to ask around or research about why is this child, when I ask her a question, she answers something almost completely different, you
Mm.
know? Um, I remember my in my sixth grade year, my parents had all the parents had
Mm.
parent teacher conferences in sixth grade and in ninth grade. And sixth grade, um, my parents went to the science teacher and the math teacher was combined, like science, math, and English history combination parent teacher conferences. And my science teacher opened up the conversation with, "Does Paula have a hearing disorder?" You know, I don't blame you for thinking that.
Mm.
But it's not a problem of hearing, it's a problem of comprehension.
Mm.
Um, in sixth grade, that same science teacher had promised my mom and my dad, okay, so when I give an assignment orally, so not a great accommodation would
Mhm.
be typing it up on a piece of paper and giving it to everyone in the classroom, for example. Because
Mhm.
also a lot of kids are also visual learners, would help, not just the DLDer. But when I give instructions orally, I will ask her just to come up real quick to the front and I'll ask her, so what did you understand of those instructions? And then I would repeat it back. And if those were correct, then good,
Mm.
go off. But if not, then I can be like, no, actually, this is what I want you to do. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Sounds great in theory, except it was never done. And again, I think it was a lack of I think it was a lack of mental energy and resources. And I think that would have been great, just like all the other things that um, should have been should have been done and was promised by other teachers, and it just didn't
Mm.
happen. So
Mm.
I remember also one other thing. Um, I remember one other thing that happened in that parent teacher conference was my math teacher, not officially, but I want to say accused because then that makes it official.
Mm.
But she kind of accused me of cheating because how is it possible that Paula can get A's on her homework, but then she comes to the test and she's crying? Well,
Mm.
because at home, I get all the time in the world.
Mm.
And I also have my parents because sixth grade math is translating language into math,
Mm.
numbers and symbols. So
Mm.
I had also I had my parents to ask them questions about.
Mm.
Am I understanding what I think I'm under? Is this actually correct in what I'm thinking? Whereas in a test, a lot of DLDers have anxiety. Makes sense, right? So I
Mm.
had the anxiety was high, it's timed, and I had no accommodations, no resources, no support to make sure that I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
And and I was a scholarship kid. So the only way to keep my scholarship was to keep the grades up. So there was an extra layer for why
Mm.
I was crying in tests. And so I'm kind of rambling, but all that to say, the teachers who wanted to help,
Mm.
I think, forgot.
Mm.
And the teachers who didn't want to help, they made that known.
Mm. Wow. My heart goes out to that little Paula and just, I don't even know, I can't even imagine how difficult that space would have been for you. And Paula, thinking about instructions. So I'm a speech pathologist by profession. And this may sound so like very silly, but it's about an instruction and almost an epiphany I had perhaps 2 months ago. Now, mind you, I've been working in the field for over 10 years, right?
Mhm.
I was, I usually, and I work in school settings, so I talk to teachers a lot about instructions and breaking instructions down. But
Mm.
hear me out and let me know if this makes sense to you. My epiphany was an instruction is a sentence. A sentence might be simple, it might be compound, where there are two things happening, or it might be complex, where you have to have multiple parts to it. That sentence has a noun, which is your concept of something you are working towards in a task, and it has a verb, or maybe two verbs. So if we look at that sentence, are we then thinking about if a child has difficulty, do they have a difficulty in either understanding the words in that sentence? Do they have a difficulty with understanding the concept that might be there? Do they have difficulty with understanding the steps they're needing to take, which is your verb, or is it a combination of it? And therefore your accommodations, scaffolds, differentiation, they all mean different things. That's when they're required. And that was my epiphany, going,
Mhm.
oh my goodness, I have been working in the field for way too long to have that epiphany then as an SLP. And my bread and butter is communication.
Mhm. Mhm.
What the hell?
Well, I mean, it's just like it's one of those things that you're as an SLP, because I have my master's in speech language pathology. So I know the field. You have to study about so many, yes, we're the experts in communication, but we have to learn about so many
Yeah.
different types of disorders and disabilities and conditions and neurodivergences. And it's it's one of those things where you kind of have to learn on the job.
Mm.
And through a lot of trial and error.
Mm.
So yes, it's your bread and butter and it's all communication, but the important thing is that eventually you got there
Mm. Mm.
and now you can take that knowledge and continue helping your clients and now even better.
Yeah, 100%. But it was, yeah, I think it struck such a deep chord because sure, it was something that would have been happening. Of course, it's been happening, but it almost passively. Oh, yeah, here's the instruction. I see where it's difficult. This is how we can break it down. But never at a level of any instruction. It doesn't matter what the instruction is. An instruction is a sentence, or maybe it might just be a couple of, it might be a phrase, but it's doing something. And yeah.
Yeah.
Um, can we stick at the school part a little bit for just
Yeah.
a little while longer? If you think back to now your diagnosis, and I'd written it here. So your receptive language, when you were initially assessed, which is your understanding of language, was higher than your expressive language. Now, that's very important to think through your ability to understand was significantly higher than your ability to express.
Mhm.
Did
Yes.
that continue through school?
I think that's even continued throughout my life,
Mm.
really. That the
Mm.
receptive language is better than my expressive language. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it I'm thinking back to it, there are so many times, and it's been so difficult where there's been so many times where I'm like, I understand what you're saying,
Mm.
and I have the way Stella described it to my parents is like it's like she has a filing cabinet full of words because she can read and write well. She can understand that. She can read well. It is the writing and the speaking that she has to go through every single file manually to pick up the word that she wants
Mm.
and she needs.
Mm.
And it's so hard when you're that kid that when you do understand it and you want to show that you get it and you're on the same level,
Mm.
it you can't.
Yeah.
And you do and you come out of there and you're like, am I dumb? Is
Mm.
there something is there something wrong with me? Like, how could I have done that better so that so that I can mask the
Mm.
developmental language disorder and I can seem like the rest of the kids?
Mm. And that makes me think about the hidden part of the disability. So now, not just because your understanding ability is higher than your expressive, because it could be the other way around as well, which
Mm-hmm.
is your understanding might be lower than your expressive, which is almost talking the talk, but
Mm-hmm.
you're fooling people into
Mm-hmm.
it. And this is, or both of them can be very low, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there is such a variance in um one or the other. It's a bit like a dance kind of thing. But the fact that you said it was hidden, everything that's happening in the brain, people can't see it or hear it, but how it comes across is in the doing part. It's either
Mm-hmm.
in you saying what you know, or you're writing what you know, or you are acting it out in some manner. But when that is challenging, then how do I know what you know? Or there might be those impressions, oh, Paula doesn't know,
Yeah.
or we've been doing this for such a long time. So then start not just the impressions, but beliefs as well. Oh, maybe she can't learn it. Like how that is so damaging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you're in tests and you're like, I know this.
Mhm.
I have studied for hours, for days, for weeks. I know I understand the concept. Now I just gotta write it on paper and I have to prove it to you. Mhm.
So, Paula, if you were to talk, say, going back to primary school, Paula, if you were to give three pieces of advice to a teacher, three pieces of advice to your peers, what would those be?
Yeah. I'm just imagining if I were invited to be a public speaker for the teachers and the the students, which I don't think they would ever do, but if I were, I would tell the teachers, oftentimes you are the first person to notice these things. You spend more time with these children. This is horrible to say, but that sometimes they're even their own parents. Right after school, they're going to sports practice. They're going to dance. They're going to this. They're going to violin. They're doing all these things to, of course, build up their skills and be exposed to the world and everything. But that's less time spent with the parents. And then they come home, they eat, and then they go to sleep. You are there. The teachers in general, maybe they'll spend like 15 minutes with one teacher and 15 minutes with another, but the child is from 8 a.m. to 3:30 with you. So you spend a lot of time with them, watch them, and talk with other teachers. Ask them what they're noticing, because you might be the first person to recognize something is off, especially when you went to school for this. So you should have an understanding of language development milestones. And then again, comparison is not good, but there are exceptions, and this is the exception. If you compare those milestones and you notice something is off, then the second thing is, do not be afraid to tell someone, whether it's a parent. If you don't feel comfortable with a parent, you tell the principal or the head of the middle school or the head of the high school, whatever, but you got to tell somebody. Because if you don't say anything, they are going to continue going through life, struggling possibly, and possibly thinking, there must be something wrong, inherently wrong with me. I'm stupid. I'm this. I'm that. When it's none of those things at all. Your brain is just wired a little differently. And when we can unlock the way your brain works, when we find the key to that, oh man, you're gonna flourish. You're gonna do so much better, not just in school, but in your relationships and everything. But somebody has to know, so that then a plan can be worked out for how to get the help and the resources and the testing needed for that child. So keep an eye out, tell somebody, and follow through with any accommodations that they've set or any accommodations that you've set. So let me tell you, these teachers had good ideas sometimes, but they were just never implemented. And I wonder how much better I would have done if I was pulled up to the front just super quick and just asked, like, hey, did you understand the instructions? You repeat it back to me. It's a great way to, when I was in school, it was recommended when you, even when you, like, doctors should be doing that too, when they give like instructions and in the treatment, like, okay, now you tell me what I just said, and let's be sure we're on the same page here. So I would say those three things. Can I add a fourth thing? Is that okay?
Absolutely, you can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Um, don't jump to conclusions.
Mm.
Don't jump to conclusions. Um, and going with that to be kind.
Mm.
Um, you don't know what a person is struggling with,
Mm.
and how, like, no, I'm not just talking about cognitively, like, this type of neurodivergence. I'm talking also like, how does that affect their social life? And then how does that affect their self-esteem? And then how does that, it's like a self-feeding loop. How does that go back and affect how their brain works in school? And so, without being a bully yourself,
Mm.
um, approach everything with kindness and be inquisitive,
Mm.
and come at it like you want to be helpful. You want to understand what is happening to the child.
Mm.
And then when you do that, you're a safe space for the kid.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's for the adults. But pause there. Did you want to say anything about that before I move on to the what I would say to my peers if I was just the adult?
Um, no, I think those points were really, really important. Do you mind if I recap them?
Absolutely.
So, oftentimes, teachers are the first ones to notice these difficulties in students. Tell somebody when that happens to see what could perhaps be done in terms of assessments, some sort of assistance if an assessment isn't readily available, all of those barriers to consider. Follow through with accommodations. They are extremely important because not following through then dips into the danger of negative self-talk for anyone, and that becomes too strong too quickly.
Hmm. I love that. Too strong, too quickly.
Yeah. The fourth one was don't jump to conclusions.
Hmm.
Approach a situation, approach the wondering with kindness and curiosity.
And you might learn something like developmental language disorder is a condition that exists, but
Mm.
you didn't know if you jumped straight to something
Mm.
mean like, is she cheating on her homework?
Yes. Yes. I like that. That was the specific example for jumping to conclusions.
Mhm.
Mm. Thank you. Tell me about your peers. What would you tell them?
So, if I could, if I were in the auditorium and I was talking to the middle school about developmental language disorder, and I could say three takeaways for your peers, three for all you children. One, just because someone responds in a way that you might not have anticipated does not make them stupid. It
Mm.
does not mean that they are a bad friend, that they're not listening to you. It might require a little more patience from you, but that's a good trait to have anyway. So, again, relating back to adults, be kind,
Mm.
treat everyone with kindness because you don't know what they're going through, you
Mm.
don't understand, and hopefully in time, someone will tell you,
Mm.
someone will explain it to you. Until then, blanket kindness to
Mm.
everyone.
Yeah.
That would be the top thing I would tell them about. Of course, I would also tell them about developmental language disorder. Like,
Okay. So, Paula, we talked about blanket kindness towards everyone, for everyone.
mhm, yes.
When it comes to students, adults too. Adults too. Yeah.
So, and like I said, maybe one day that person will open up and they'll be like, "Hey, I have this condition, this thing that my brain is wired a little differently, and this is how I need the support."
Mm.
Someday an adult maybe will tell you about such and such condition, and this is what you need to do if you meet someone like this. This is how to treat them. This is how you talk to them.
Mm.
But if I were a public speaker, if I was speaking that on that stage to the middle school of my old school, I would be like, today's the day that I am the adult and I am telling you what developmental language disorder is, so that you know developmental language disorder is a chronic lifelong condition that impacts the use and understanding of language. What does that mean for you? Because that's what you care about. That means that children with DLD are still learning how to um, interact with their peers
Mm.
when, especially as a preteen, you're going to be more sarcastic.
Mm.
You are going to make more jokes. You are going to use more abstract language.
Mm.
Just have the patience
Mm.
as they are working through it. Be open to repeating things again. You don't need to speak slowly. We're not hearing impaired.
Mm.
You don't need to you don't need to simplify it like we're like little babies.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
about to say simplify it
Very.
like we're children, but if these are children, then yeah. So you don't need to talk to us like we're babies.
Mm.
We are the age that we are.
Mm.
And we are perfectly capable
Mm.
of being your friend, being a supportive person in your life.
Mm.
We're fun. We are just like anyone else.
Mm.
Just have patience with us as we go through this period where language demands become a little more intense.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but the friendship is worth it. So these are just things that you can do in your everyday life when you interact with someone who you suspect they might not tell you that they have DLD.
Mm.
That's the third thing, is that not everyone, I was lucky that I had a mom who was insistent that something is wrong. And I was so fortunate that the preschool aide was the one who noticed that there was something not quite right with the way I was speaking. And not every family has that.
Mm.
Not every family has that kind of support or that kind of adult in their lives, even outside of the home.
Mm.
And they might not know that they have this condition. And so if you suspect it,
Mm.
don't say anything,
Mm.
don't just do the same thing. Do the same thing of being patient with them,
Mm.
being patient if you need to restate something, whether it's saying the same phrase or sentence again, or whether it's rephrasing it in a simplified way, not in a baby way.
Mm.
But not everyone is privileged and lucky
Mm.
to have that diagnosis. So just again, I guess it's very related to point two after all, huh? Blanket kindness.
Yeah. And Paula, I'll tell you one of the reasons why I wanted us to spend a little bit of time talking about your DLD at primary and, even secondary school to a certain extent. This is where a lot of the childhood develops. You learn things ready for the next phase in life. We're thinking close to 11, 12, 13 years of your life between primary and secondary school, preparing you to then get ready for what's to come ahead. And if
Mhm.
we are not putting our energy and thinking into how do we do the best for our kids with the capacity and the knowledge we have, then what does that look like for them in their trajectory as a young adult with DLD, as an older adult with DLD, and just appreciating how difficult life can be if it's not difficult enough already.
Mhm.
Because that phrase, too strong, too fast, is just that
Yeah.
can happen very quickly
Yeah.
with so thank you for taking us through DLD at home, DLD at school. We have covered three pieces of advice for teachers, three pieces of advice for students. I would now love to travel with you to your journey at university.
Yeah.
Why did you choose speech language pathology? And what was that like? Like, what was it studying like for you?
Yeah. So I got my first bachelor's degree, my Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Social
Okay.
Action. And I thought I was going to be a school counselor because I wanted to work within the schools and still would love to do that as a dream, but I would love to, I would have loved to have worked in the schools and create stronger anti-bullying policies there. By listening to student stories and getting a general feel of the school culture,
Mm,
then I could help make a change.
mm,
Now, as part of the graduation requirement for school, you had to do an internship, and you also had to do some observation hours with a specific psychologist, therapist, whoever, that in the field that you were interested in. And
mm,
so I did. I met a couple of times with a school counselor, and we talked, and she was like, you want to shake things up. You want to shake up the status quo. And the schools might not like that. So it's great and admirable, but you
mm.
might not get a job. So here I am, on graduation day, and I have a degree, and I had no idea what I was gonna do.
Oh.
So, um, so after graduation, I actually had a dinner with Stella,
Mm,
and we talked about what my next steps could be, what are my next options, and she's like, you know what, you know what it's like to be on the other side of the speech therapy table. You know what it's like. A lot of speech language pathologists, speech language therapists, they are neurotypical,
mm,
or they were in school, or they were in services briefly, but you were there for an extended period of time, and you can empathize with these children or adults, whichever population you want to work with.
mm,
So you might, if you like helping people, this is directly helping people, you might want to consider doing that. And then you would, again, like, have an extra element of helping
mm,
by being an empathetic person, being like, I know what it's like to struggle,
mm.
and but look where I am. So you can probably get there too.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay,
Mm,
okay. That sounds good to me. Now what do I do? And she said, well, kind of like what you did with the school counselor,
mm,
do observation hours, kind of do an internship and
mm,
see how it feels for you. And I did it at an elementary school
mm,
nearby. And I really enjoyed what I was doing. So I decided, okay, I want to go to grad school for speech language pathology, and I want to be a speech language pathologist, and I want to work with kids.
Mm.
And then I go through the post baccalaureate program at the University of Washington over in Seattle.
Mm.
And then I get into the grad school program at Emerson College. And as I'm going through school, I realize actually there are so many unanswered questions for developmental language disorder. There is so little research. I actually want to do research instead, and I have so many questions that I want to answer myself, and I don't want to rely on other people.
Mm.
So that is how I got on the speech language pathology track, but specifically in my field of interest is research about DLD.
That is incredible. Now we're at a point where I tell the audience about how we connected. So I was, at the time, I've now completed it, but at the time I was doing a master's program at the University of Melbourne, and it was a research subject, and I had to write a research proposal. My question was, and there is very little research about this, is we as SLPs are providing all of these recommendations for students with DLD. But how does that work if the teachers, particularly if they're monolingual teachers, they've got one language, but they don't understand enough about language to break it down, or they think they're breaking it down, but it's not broken down enough. A person that is a bilingual, multilingual, we are usually breaking down language and putting it back together. We're manipulating it to that idea of constructing and deconstructing it. And therefore, is there a difference between the two teachers, perhaps, in that case? So my question was very much around, if somebody doesn't know a lot about language, then how effective are they in actually breaking instructions down, breaking topics down, breaking concepts down to help support children with DLD, but an extension, children with language disorders associated with another condition, or their classroom kids, because more like kids are coming in with very many different conditions requiring different supports and accommodations. That's when I read your paper. And it was the first research article I have read that had plain English, that was almost a narrative style of writing. And it was yourself, Carla McGregor, and Stella that were the triad in this paper. And I
Mhm.
just loved it. Was like I could perceive the love in that paper. That was my feeling when I read it. And that was the reason why I was totally stalking. And I was like, what's this for? I am really interested in this person. I just want to learn a little bit more. And that's where we connected. So I was successful in that stalking. I apologize, people, do not stalk, please.
No, but like I mean, like I said, I've been doing this since 2011 as a social activist and a
Yeah.
motivational speaker, and so my Instagram is completely public, for example. So, as long as you're not like researching like intimate details about me, but like but being kind of a public figure, I'm open to people come looking at my Instagram or
Yeah.
finding me and being like, "Hey, I have questions. Or anything about DLD or
Mm.
anti-bullying." So you're totally fine.
And so tell us. Tell us about the title of this paper, Paula, and tell us about this paper because I will be linking it when I do publish this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so you're referring to my article, which is published in, goodness, it was in 2023.
Yeah,
Um, a first person account of developmental language disorder. That's what it was
the
called,
one.
right?
That's the one. Yes.
That's the one. The title, the reason, I mean, it's so, it's very direct. It tells
Mhm.
you there's no flourish. It is what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason why it was titled like this, and it was written the way that it is as a case study, is because there is no other, like you said, which you alluded to, there's no other article like this that asks an adult to think back on their life, um, their 30 years of life with developmental language disorder, and talk about what it was like for them
Mm.
at the moment, and also thinking back with an adult mature perspective on it as well. I think there was a similar a sort of similar case study, but it was for another type of condition. So, like I said, this is the first of its kind.
Mm.
Um, yeah, what else did you want me to say about this article again? Remind
Um,
me.
oh no, that was my bad. I was just trying to recall when I read that article. It talked about your childhood. It
Yeah.
talked about your parents. And actually, if I'm correct, it also mentioned your when there was a light bulb moment between your parents and when your mom, it was during that lecture because it sounded very familiar. Pretty sure it was in the paper. But
Hmm.
what you did during, or the help you received, the services you received during that early childhood, and then perhaps the lack of services at a school level and
Hmm.
secondary
Yes.
school, like that was portrayed in the article. And then you talked about what developmental language disorder is, how it had an impact on you, because while it's a condition, it is also individual and its impacts are, yeah, quite individualized
Yes.
between different people. So, really, I don't think there was much of a question, but just to acknowledge that you have written this article um,
Yeah.
with two other authors, and I will be linking it to the show notes.
Thank you. So to highlight something that you had said about it is so individual.
Mm.
Like, I'm stealing it from uh I can't remember now what other condition it is, but it's the same for DLD, where like, just, you know, when you've met one DLDer, you just met one DLDer. That is, it, I we have generally, of course, things that if you take a group of DLDers, that
Mm.
we all uh, can relate to and we connect with, but there's so many individual differences.
Mm.
Like, for for me, for example, um, I I struggled with school in middle school and high school, but then in college, once I got all the accommodations that I should have gotten in high school, and we could talk more about that later if we have the time. But once I got all the accommodations and it was implemented as they should have been, I was doing so well in
Mm.
college and in grad school. In grad school, I got almost straight A's.
Mm.
And I think also the same for college, actually. I think I had almost all A's. Yeah, except for
Wow.
except for statistics. Yeah. But 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 I mean,
Yeah.
it was it 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 that is different from the research when you look at the when you look at the research of what the future can hold for a person with DLD. It doesn't say very many positive things about us. It says that um, people with DLD are less likely to go to college, and if they do go to college, they'll go for a degree where there's not a lot of demand for them to use language. So maybe they'll have a degree like art, which is not bad. No, and I mean, you still
Mhm.
have to write papers analyzing art and things like that. But do you see what I mean about like there's not a lot there's less of a demand in using your language skills than
Mm.
perhaps if you were maybe like an English major.
Yeah.
And then even less of those, even fewer of those people will
Mm.
go on to get a master's, and then it's like practically unheard of to get a PhD.
Yeah.
And it is the likelihood for employment, people with DLD are more likely to be under or unemployed for at least a year. And
Mm.
so it's it, it I now I with the employment now, remember, in the United States right now there's a job market crisis, and
Mhm.
everyone's on the struggle bus.
Yeah.
but um but yeah, I would say that it's if you can talk to different people with DLD, if you
Mm.
can find them, if they
Yeah.
know they have DLD,
Mm.
um, because this is just my experience with it.
Yeah. Um, Paula, if you do have some time, I'd love to for you to talk about the accommodations that were super useful for you, even if it's a dot point um, when you were studying, but also thinking about perhaps employment
Yeah.
or organizations. Do these accommodations actually translate from university or higher education through to employment?
Great question. Um, so spoiler alert, the accommodations that I had in school, I don't think were very applicable to the accommodations I needed for work.
Hmm.
Um, I think I need different accommodations for work.
Mhm.
So, but that's just me going into the field of speech language pathology. So who knows, if you were to go to another type of field, maybe
Yeah.
they would better transfer over. But so I was reassessed in the summer before ninth grade,
Mm.
because I what happened in eighth grade was I I had failed. This is the only F I ever got in middle and high school. Um, I absolutely failed a history final that you had to do. I mean, I feel like every way of testing a child, they just put it in this test of like multiple choice, fill in the blank with a box that you could pull words from, short answers and an essay.
Oh,
Um, and I'm pretty sure you had to do that all in an hour.
yeah.
And so the person who struggled with language didn't even finish the test. And so it was a big fat F, and my parents and I were afraid for if this was going to be like a precursor to high
Mm.
school level work. So
Mm.
we were like, we need to get accommodations, and we need to get this recognized by the school.
Mm.
So I went to see a a neuropsychologist
Mm.
who again diagnosed me with a learning disability and agreed with the previous diagnosis of developmental language disorder,
Mm.
basically. And so the recommendations that she had made that transferred from high school to college to grad school was um, I got extended time for quizzes, tests, in-class writing assignments, um, and that I was recommended for double time due to how I was performing on the test. So for example, one of the tests that she had me do was she had me write a story based on 4 pictures. The neuropsychologist was like, this usually takes people 15 minutes, but take as long as you need. I took an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. Within the 15-minute mark, she came in and she was just, I just want to see where you are. And it was like, I hadn't gotten very far. And so she recommended double time. And she also recommended having a separate room to take the test in. So my anxiety wasn't heightened by seeing all my peers coming up and turning in their tests better than I did. But it just kind of also makes sense. Like it's kind of built in. If you're taking a test and you need double time, you're gonna take longer. You're gonna need to be in another room. Those two kind of go together. So double time, a separate room. Then I also was recommended to have a note taker or a peer note taker or a recording pen. Like I don't know if you've ever heard of LiveScribe. They have these pens where the technology is built in the notebook and in the pen, and so it records from the tip and you're writing, and if you miss something, you can go back later and you can play the recording on the pen and you can tap where was the last place you wrote, and then it will go back in the recording, and so you can hear again the part that you missed.
Yeah.
So a LiveScribe pen or a physical recorder that you could put at the corner of your table also works too. So let's see, there was the extra time, there was the separate room, the peer note taker, the recording pen or the recorder. Also, to go along with that, she also recommended if the teacher is teaching from a PowerPoint, send the PowerPoint ahead of time. And then I don't have to worry about what's written on the board. It's already in front of me. I just have to, or not written on the board, but like on the projection screen. I just have to listen and write it down.
Yeah.
So those were, and in college, I also got, for my anxiety that sort of developed alongside the DLD, I also got special permission to bring my emotional support dog. So that one, that was just a kindness from the disabilities office. But yeah, those are the main ones I used and I would recommend. And when I went to grad school, I decided to do grad school online. And the great thing, like as I'm saying this, another accommodation was sitting up in the front, a guaranteed seat at the front of the class. So I had direct access to the teacher and the board or the projection screen or whatever, and I didn't need to have all the distractions around me. But the great thing about grad school was that half of those things I didn't need. I didn't need assigned seating when we're in Zoom. I didn't need a note taker when we have a transcript playing.
Yes.
And I can download it, and we've got subtitles.
Yeah.
I didn't need I didn't need a recorder or a peer note taker, and I didn't need to take a test in a separate room because we were told just find the time, and I still got my double time. I did not get all of my that said I did not get all of my accommodations in my it was a combination middle and high school, so I did not get my accommodations in that middle and high school, which I was told later by SLPs, like that's that may have been an unethical thing to do.
Mm, mm,
That's an unethical thing to do. Not putting
yeah.
official labels there, but yes. Um, so all that to say, those really helped me. Now,
Mm,
when I started to do my clinical fellowship, I mean, you can just hear like none of those would relate really
yeah.
to working with children and their families.
Mm,
So, um, I think accommodations for a DLDer, whether they're in the field of speech language pathology or not,
mm,
I think things I would recommend would include a little more hand holding. I know that's not the official way of saying it, but a little more hand holding, especially at the beginning.
yeah.
More check-ins, more um, more one-on-one time,
Mm,
direct training
mhm,
from a manager, a supervisor, somebody in charge. Um, I know, for example, I worked briefly in Jamba Juice, for example, and I know food service jobs like that, they'll give you tests to do, you have to memorize recipes and write them back out on a piece of paper.
mm,
So for those kinds of jobs, extra time there,
mhm,
a separate room for that. Access, if it if there's words on a, or like imaginary scenarios on a
mm,
test or whatever, having access to your manager, maybe don't have them working like on the floor when you're taking the test so that you can easily ask them for clarification.
yeah.
Um, there are, yeah, depending on the job,
Mm,
there are different things I would recommend.
yeah.
But 100% people with DLD need um, a little more time with whoever their supervisor is,
Mm,
whoever is teaching them. I think also they would benefit from, um, it's not an accommodation, but having a manager or somebody who understands the condition,
mm, mm,
and then having, if there's, not saying complaints from customers or clients or whoever, but if
mm,
there's any feedback, they can have their employees back, and
yeah.
don't reveal that your employee has DLD, but say something like, you know, something that shows that you have their back and you support them, and
Mm,
that this is a type of neurodivergence.
mm,
Of course, whatever, however much you want to disclose, you got to work that out with the person with DLD, but you got to have their back,
mm,
because the world is going to demand of them the abilities of a neurotypical person, and we're just not.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Paula, for being so generous with sharing your life chapter, really, a big part of your life chapter, and for stating things so clearly. As we do wrap up, has there been something that I haven't asked, haven't delved into that you would like to tell our audience?
Anything that I think really, I dove a lot of I dove into a big part of, my family life,
Mm,
my experience, socially with being bullied, all in my article.
mm,
So I no, I think you touched upon, or you in out of this interview, we've enhanced some things from the article,
yeah.
and no, I think we're good. Yeah.
Thank you. For everyone that's going to be listening to this Human Chapters conversation, it's going to be available on Human Chapters YouTube channel, Human Chapters podcast, Apple, Spotify, a couple of others as well that I can't remember the names of. Please do share this conversation with others. There are many people with DLD. It is a hidden disability. The more awareness we can spread, the better our community will be. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and thank you to everyone who's listening today.